Welcome back. If you have ever gotten that emergency call with a student waiting in your office for some type of a crisis and you don't even know where to begin, you're in the right spot. We are completing our series on how to have effective counseling session by talking about crisis interventions. Now, if you haven't seen the other videos, we'll make sure that they're linked around this one, but just so that you know, my name is Kavalin Day. I am the founder of the School Social Worker and Mental Health Provider Facebook community. I'm a school counselor by trade. I am a practicing trauma-informed coach, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about crisis intervention sessions. So I'm going to tell you how I'm kind of defining crisis intervention, and then we'll talk about some of the strategies to kind of help you. When we're thinking about a crisis, I'm not saying crisis in the terms of, there's an intruder in the building. What I'm talking about is a crisis where a student is not able to be functional in the classroom environment, or they have a significant challenge outside of school that's made its way into school. Maybe there's on a lighter end, maybe there's a significant break in a family, like a friendship or a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship where they're devastated by the loss. Maybe they've had they have grief or something that has happened outside of school and they're struggling in the moment. So when we're talking about crisis counseling, it's really that there's something specifically in this moment preventing this child from being successful in the academic environment. So this moment, there's something small, like an actual event or situation that is preventing that from being successful. Now, it's not that uncommon to happen, right? And we sometimes have a really specific, viewpoint of what's a real crisis. So I don't want you to get tripped up on whether or not, this boyfriend drama is a real crisis. When we're saying it's a crisis to the student, right? So they're not able to be successful in the moment right now. So that's what's most important. So our goals in the crisis counseling scenario is really, we're not necessarily looking at those big long-term goals. You haven't necessarily had an opportunity to look at data or trends. You haven't had an opportunity to prepare in advance. When you have a large caseload, like 300, 400, 500 students, oftentimes you maybe you've been presented with a crisis, and this may not even be a student you have rapport with. So they're in the middle of an emotional meltdown. You don't know anything about them, and you're trying to figure out how you can best support them. So first thing I want you to know, so we're going to talk just about a couple things to remember when you're talking about crisis counseling. I'm going to give you 5 points, so feel free to take some notes on these. First thing you want to do is check for safety. This is the most important part when we're talking about a crisis plan, particularly when you see a child who is really struggling emotionally. It's completely appropriate to ask, are you safe? Right? Do you have is there any reason why I should be concerned about your safety? Is anyone, including yourself or anyone else, thinking of harming you or attempting to harm you or threatening to harm you? That's an important distinction to make. So you want to check and make sure that you're safe, and make sure that they are safe. If you have any concerns at all about weapons or anything like that, make sure that you follow your school's crisis intervention process, which might include calling the resource officer, or could be, include actually calling the police to come in and address the student that's there. But your goal is make sure that you are addressing the safety, and be really clear with this. Like, hey, my job is to make sure that you're safe and to keep as many people safe as I can within these walls. So I want to check for that. The only time I ever have to tell anybody anything outside of this office is when I'm concerned about safety. So I just want to make sure, are you safe? Is everybody that's associating with you safe? Okay, so you want to check that first. The next thing you want to do, whether you have a rapport with them or not, is try to establish some rapport. The best way to establish rapport in a crisis setting is to listen. Right? So you want to try and listen to them, what they're telling you, and give them some empathy and compassion about what they're saying. Their story, and this is an important point, their story may not seem like a crisis to you, but if it is experienced as a crisis to them, listening is the number one thing that you can do. As you're listening to the story, do not try to judge the story, but try to identify what are those major kind of key points, those things that are coming up over and over again, those themes. And then you want to go into your standard counseling practice of reflecting that, right? So you want to reflect that back to them. That's a really, really good way to build that rapport, even if you don't have a lot of time or a strong relationship with them in advance. Next, number 3, you want to identify the problems that they need solved. This is, again, a big point. Sometimes you have a student who's in a crisis. They are too emotional to be in class. They're having a meltdown. They tell you what's going on. They've rambled, and you think they want X, Y, Z solved, and they really want A, B, C solved. So you want to say to them, again, clear and concrete. It sounds like you're saying blank is the problem. It sounds like you're saying this breakup is really the problem. It sounds like you're saying that your mom is going to be mad at you is really the problem. And you want to give them an opportunity to say, yes, that's it, or no, that's not it. So you want to make sure that you're identifying the problem. Then you can once you've identified the problem, then you go to step 4. And I like to invite kids, particularly in a crisis, I like to invite them to explore solutions with me. So you might say something like this. You know what? This sounds really heavy. It sounds really hard. And I appreciate you sharing it with me. But I want to see if there's something that we can do. I don't know for sure if I can help, but I really would like to try. Would it be okay with you if we talked about what we might do from here on out? Like what might be a solution, right? Particularly when we're talking about middle schoolers and high schoolers, but even at the elementary level, you really want to give them an opportunity to accept or decline your assistance, right? Sometimes the crisis is they want to talk and they don't want a solution, right? So you might even ask, is this the time when you need some help finding a solution, right? Do you need my help finding a solution? All of these are things that you might be able to say, particularly in a crisis. And remember, the other thing that we probably should definitely touch on is when we're talking about a crisis, your body language, the energy you bring with you, the way in which you're sitting, the distance you place between you and the student, all of those things you want to just be really mindful of. If they're more reluctant or resistant or maybe kind of more compact, that might mean that they want you to stay a little bit farther away, right? So always ask, no, quick or aggressive movements, and really, again, offer things and then allow them to accept or decline. And then after you've had some time to explore solutions, you want to make a plan, right? And sometimes that plan involves you physically walking with the student, taking them where they need to go. Sometimes that plan is them being more calm and them saying, hey, yep, I can go back to school. I can go back to class. And then you say like, hey, can I check in with you later today? Can I check in with you before you go home? Can I send you a pass to your last period so you can check in with me before you leave for the day? Those are the kind of things that you want to make a plan for, right? So when do you think I should check up on this? When do you think we should check again? Do you think it would be helpful if we gave it a day or two to calm down? Those kind of things. So give them an opportunity to kind of make a plan. And that also kind of keeps the connection going. So they don't feel like, oh, I've just came in here and dumped and now I'm on my own. So you want to give that connection. So remember, our tips for having a great crisis session is first and foremost, always check for safety. Make sure that everybody is safe in the space that you're in, and then also have conversations about how safety is maintained. Make that connection, build that rapport, whether you've had a really great relationship with them before or you've never met them at all. Listening is a great way to start with that. I help them to identify the problem. Let them talk, and then you reflect back. Is this what the problem is? It sounds like this is what the problem is, right? And then explore those solutions, invite them to explore those solutions. And then ultimately you want to make a plan. Okay, so those are the 5 ways that you can have a great crisis counseling session so that hopefully you'll be able to get things stabilized, which is the ultimate goal in a crisis session, and then maintain that relationship that you've had. Now, you have surely taken advantage of the free Facebook community that I host, the school social worker and mental health provider Facebook community. But I also want, now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit better, I want to give you an opportunity to be a part of my inner circle. Now, the inner circle is the group that I host that gives you access to a wonderful library of resources and tools, many of which I have shared with you on several of these videos, but it also gives you access to a live Q&A call. One of the things, particularly if you are the only counselor who's maybe getting crisis thrown at you time and time again, one of the things that my community told me was they really hated being isolated and not having somebody that they could get feedback from. So I wanted to make sure that I provided you with an opportunity to get those things. So I created the inner circle. So each month you get access, so you have all the time access to a library. Each month there is a new tool released and a new mini professional development training, which in 30 minutes or less will kind of walk you through how to use that tool with your students. And then you also get access to a live Q&A call where you can ask me as well as your fellow counselors to kind of give you some feedback on the problem that you have, to give you some feedback or some additional strategies on the things that you're working on. So it's a really great opportunity for network and collaboration. Sometimes you'll find people who are near you that you can kind of give some feedback to. It's a really great opportunity. So I'm going to include the link around this video for the inner circle, because now that we have gotten to know each other a little bit, I would love to have you join. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Keep doing what you do because it absolutely matters.